Call the meeting to order and raise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the June 24th Minnehaha County City of Sioux Falls joint meeting. I would remind you to silence your cell phones. I would recognize that we do have a quorum on the county side.
And I'm going to call for a roll call of the City Council.
Council members Anderson, Erickson,
Here.
Erpenbach,
Here.
Jamison,
Here.
Karski,
Here.
Kiley,
Here.
Rolfing,
Here.
Staggers.
Present.
And we do have a quorum. Welcome to our City Council. And
I'd ask for a motion on the county side to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda on the county side. Are there any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the regular agenda for the City Council.
So moved, Erpenbach.
Second, Rolfing.
We have a motion and a second. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jamison,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Motion has been approved by a vote of 7 to nothing. I'm sorry. I had to count them. All righty. We'll start with our
Move
our
on with
readings.
the agenda number one.
Item number one is a public hearing to consider the Joint Planning Commission's recommendation to approve text amendment number 14-01 to the 2002 revised joint zoning ordinance for Minnehaha County and the City of Sioux Falls. Scott Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Scott Anderson, representing Minnehaha County Planning and Zoning. Today we have a text amendment, as the clerk read off, to amend our joint zoning ordinance that we have the joint area around the City of Sioux Falls. Just to give you a little brief background, this is generally described as a text amendment that would allow the operation of solar energy conversion systems, which would be similar to wind energy. This came to our attention that we were approached asking how we would deal with solar energy generation. We looked at our zoning ordinance, and there was nowhere in our zoning ordinance that we allowed solar energy to be any kind of a permitted use, a conditional use, nothing. It was never addressed. And I sort of think that's because the solar energy industry has made huge strides, and this area at one time maybe wasn't considered a prime solar energy producing area. However, with the modifications and advances made in the industry, it's now a viable option, and we have interest in a 1.5 megawatt solar generation plant, which is located in the joint area. And to accommodate this potential use of this land, we have brought forth a text amendment which would create a definition for solar energy conversion systems, and then it would make it a conditional use permit in the A1 agriculture, the commercial district, the industrial districts, and the recreational conservation districts. Furthermore, it adds Article 12.4, which is really the meats and bones on how we would address the conditional use when they come in. On the screen before you, you can see a typical solar energy conversion system that is operating in Minnesota around the St. Cloud area, so it is a viable use. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have. It is intended that this would allow for this use to occur in those zoning districts as a conditional use. So once it is adopted, or if it should be adopted, and if there is interest in proceeding ahead from a development perspective, the applicant would be required to bring forth a conditional use permit, and it would go before the bodies, the Planning Commission, and then subsequently, if it was appealed, to the County Commission. But there would be generous public input. We modeled the solar energy conversion system ordinance very similar to our wind energy conversion system, and when we adopted that section of our zoning ordinance about 5 or 6 years ago. We had a lot of input from the PUC. We had industry people that were helping us and a lot of interested citizens. So I think that it's a well-crafted ordinance. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Scott. Are there any questions on the county side? Commissioner Kelly?
Well, it's not a question, but it's procedural. Are we going to have the discussion amongst the whole group and then go to the vote separately, or are we going to do like we've done in the past, which doesn't seem to work very well?
I'm going to ask for questions from Scott, then I'm do proponents, opponents, and then we can have discussion after they've had the questions. Then
But is
I'll
it
ask
just
for
county, or is it going to be the entire county, city, just entire group?
entire county, city side. And then we will look for a motion from the county side, and then we will look for a motion from the city side. Any additional comments?
Thank
And then
you.
we will vote.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions from the county side for Scott? Seeing no questions from the county side.
And procedurally, I should ask, do we need to read this into record for the city side?
She did, we're fine.
Okay, so it's read into record, okay. This is a second reading, so questions from the council? Councilor Jameson.
Thank you, Scott. I didn't see it in the ordinance requiring the surface of the land underneath the panels to be prepared in any certain fashion or determined if it's asphalt or gravel or grass. Does that matter?
Well, typically it's going to depend on the developer. It doesn't, at this point, it doesn't make any difference. If they were, let's say they were to put it in an industrial area, it could be in a paved area. If it was out in an agricultural area, it's likely that it would remain like you see here, which would be sort of a grassland. It would be kept in a natural vegetative state, as long as the grass or the vegetation doesn't block or impede the sun, which these are set about 6 feet tall, so our native vegetation grasses don't typically get that high. But it's not spelled out in there, so that would be something that we would address when the development proposal came in, identify how they're going to be constructing it.
Thank you.
Councilor Erpenbach.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much. This is kind of exciting to be kind of on that cutting edge. But I think I understand that, but I'm not sure I'm getting there. Is there a plan? Do we know there's someone out there that we're kind of writing this for? Or
Yes.
we're just kind of...
No,
okay.
there is interest from a solar generating group, industry, or business that is looking at some property that is located within the joint jurisdiction of the City of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County.
Okay. So then when you're talking about it could be the land surface underneath those solar panels could be really whatever they want it to be. You're saying this particular one may be out where that plot is that we're looking at on the map,
Yeah.
but there might be others then that in the future might be built in an industrial area or
There could
that's the context for that answer. Okay, good. Thank you.
Other questions from the council? It is a second reading. Is there any public input?
We're not
Oh,
ready for
I'm
that.
sorry, not ready for that.
I have a question on the county side. Commissioner Kelly?
I guess I didn't understand the procedure. How much area does a typical solar farm take? Do you know?
Well, I think that I don't know if we can say there's a typical size, because it really it's based on the economy and the area the 1 point, just to give you an idea of the size that might be required, it's about 300. I think that's about 380 acres, and it will be generating about 1.5 megawatts of electricity. So, I mean, you could have small plants, which may only generate enough for a business and then sell some surplus to the grid. You could have a huge facility where you're generating megawatts worth of electricity.
Follow up.
Kelly?
This does not affect anybody, a home, a residential situation at all. This is only for large commercial.
It specifies in there commercial. It's for commercial generation of electricity.
And is there anything required on a residence?
No, anything that would be attached or used with a residence would be considered to be accessory to that residential use. This came up in the Planning Commission. One of our planning commissioners has a solar roof vent that is a fan that is operated with solar panels. And that, for an example, that is solar operated and it's generating electricity, but it's really accessory to that use for the residents.
So is that a written statute, or is it just assumed that that's?
It's written in statute that it's, when you look at this the zoning text amendment, that it's for commercial generation, and you would be hooking into the commercial grid and selling it on a wide scale.
Thank you.
Wide scale.
Councilor Rolfing.
Yes. I'm looking at the map, what you've got up there, and looking at this, saying it's a half a mile from the edge of the city right now. With everything going on and the way things are growing, it's not going to be long, and it's going to be right out to the edge. Are there things looked at that says what happens when there's houses all the way around that piece of property, and it's filled there, and we get somebody from the neighborhood who comes in and says, this is really not very pleasant to be there. Are we going to be in a situation where we're going to, well, we're not going to have to ask, but we're going to have to take some heat for this? Or is it a situation where if that development happens all around that piece of property is going to be so valuable that they would probably look at moving that farm?
Well, I can tell you a little bit of this, to answer your question, it would be development driven, and I think that from a perspective of a land use perspective, we could make that easily blend together. It's a very low impact use. I mean, once you get that out there, it's like a cemetery. Some people really like living next to them because you don't have any neighbors. There's open space. You're going to have vegetation where you can have birds and butterflies and whatever, and you won't have noise, you won't have traffic. So in some respects it might be a nice land use to have in that area, and it's just like many things that we deal with in planning and zoning. It's a balancing act and making them work together.
Councilor Erpenbach. Oh, sorry.
One more question, if I could. I'm, again, scanning the changes to the ordinance and wondering if, when it comes to the conditional use permit time, assuming this passes the way that it's written, we get to the point where it's conditional use permit time. Can one of the conditions, or can we specify or ask the applicant about where that power is going? If it's being generated here, do we get to know where it's going to be used?
Yes, we would. We would know where it's going. I mean, it's basically just tied into the grid, and it ends up going to one of those large substations, and then further onto the WAPA stations or Excel. But ultimately, it's used. I suppose you could say it's used locally. I mean, this is a clean energy that will help our community grow. I mean, so. That is ultimately where it's going. It goes right here.
Right. Don't hear me arguing with you.
No, I'm not. I know. I'm just and I'm not an electrical engineer, so I'm assuming it just goes into the power grid and gets gobbled up.
That's the technical term for it. Thank you, Scott.
Councilor Rolfing.
Yeah, I have one more. Tying into the power grid, is that going to be above ground or below ground?
That I couldn't tell you. I would have to wait to see when the development proposal comes in. I mean, we'd have to sort of see what's out there for infrastructure, and they would need to let us know how that would
That could be part of a conditional use, so that we would say it has to be underground to keep the aesthetics of the place.
We could look at that, yes.
Okay.
No,
Councilor Kiley.
Regarding the conditional use permits too, I would imagine that the time to place the condition for a buffer of, let's say, evergreen trees around the property would be right away at this point in time, because you're not going to do that later on once it's engulfed by a residential area. So that is a condition you could place.
Certainly, we would be looking at landscaping, buffering. If there was a need for buffering or landscaping, that would be something we could address during the conditional use permit process.
And my thought regarding Councilor Rolfing's comment about could it be repurposed for other uses later on, my guess is transmission lines are probably not cheap to construct and to move. Do you have any idea whether that's likely to happen once it's in place?
I don't know if I could give you an answer for that. I know that it's relatively low impact. It's a matter of posts, being driven in about 4 to 6 feet. And then it's a saddle system. Basically, it maneuvers on a pivoting post. So you have the solar panels that can pivot and follow the sun, but there's not huge footings. So in some respects, it could be relatively easy to redevelop.
There's no more questions. This is a public hearing, so we would look for any proponents in the audience that would like to speak at this time. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Are there any opponents to this? Seeing none, we will return back to the council. If there are no more questions or comments, I would take a motion from the county side.
So moved.
It was a motion to approve on the county side with a second. Is there any other discussion on the county side? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously on the county side.
And for the city council, I need a same motion.
So
to
moved.
approve.
Councilor Kiley did the motion to approve. I need a second. Councilor Erpenbach.
You bet.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erickson,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jamison,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
That motion is passed by a vote of 7-0. Next agenda item. Sorry.
The next item, consider a motion to approve the appointment of Jeff Nelson to the Homeless Advisory Board for a term from May 2014 to August 2015. Stacy Teason.
Hi, good evening. I'm Stacy Teason. I'm the coordinator for the Homeless Advisory Board. I see new faces, so I'm excited and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you for what you do. The Homeless Advisory Board is a joint city-county board that was established about 8 years ago, almost 9 actually. And all of the board members have to be appointed unanimously by first the board and then by a joint resolution. So that's why I'm here today. Lisa Jarding moved to Omaha, so we need a replacement for her. So we have Jeff Nelson that is extremely excited and looking forward to working with us on efforts to reduce homelessness in Sioux Falls and to find some solutions to our affordable housing issues that are perplexing and complicated. And so I just request that you approve this motion. The board obviously approved it unanimously for us to bring it forward, and so here I am asking you to approve it as well.
Are there any questions for Stacy on the county side? Commissioner Kelly.
Is there any other information on Mr. Nelson, or could you give it? They didn't give us anything in the documentation.
Jeff Nelson is a realtor with HGN Realty here in Sioux Falls. He's currently serving as the chair of the Sioux Empire Housing Partnership Board. He has a master's degree and in education, and I believe he also has a doctorate. He's pretty much always been in real estate, so he's got a good background in trying to figure out some of our more complicated issues. He's served on the school board in the past. He's served on the Southeast Tech Board in the past. His personal references are Jim Schmidt, who's a Lincoln County Commissioner and also the director of the Sioux Empire Housing Partnership, and then also Councilor Erpenbach as a reference for him as well.
Any other questions on the county side?
City Council, Michelle, Councilor Erpenbach.
I would just comment to the group that I represent the city on the Homeless Advisory Board, and Jeff Nelson is one of those people that we want in that position. He understands the issues that we're dealing with, and he understands where we're headed with this this issue in our community, and I'd ask you to vote in favor.
Councilor Jamison.
I was going to say all that reference on Jeff was all good until you said Jim Schmidt, so it's kind of like great, and then it went from.
It's not even in the room.
But I do know Jeff personally, and I would make a highly qualified recommendation for Jeff, if I said that right. But either way, his passion is there, his knowledge is there, his abilities I think will serve you well, serve our community well, and And if he's excited about it, I think you've got great things to come.
Counselor Kiley.
I also know Jeff Nelson personally. I worked with Jeff during my Lincoln High School days, and I think he would be a fine candidate.
Any other comments? I would look for a motion on the county side.
Move to approve the resolution.
Motion. Second. Motion and a second on the county side. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously on the county side.
City Council, a motion to approve.
So moved. Second, Erpenbach.
Counselor Rolfing moves, second by Counselor Erpenbach. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing? Staggers?
Yes.
That motion is passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you.
Is there any old business? Is there any new business? Seeing none, I would take a motion on the county side for adjournment.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second on the county side for adjournment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Sioux Falls City Council, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion
Second, Erpenbach.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.